Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the It's the Pitchers podcast. I'm your host, Max Colville, and this is episode 169. I am joined by my great co host, Evan Crean. Hi, Evan.
Hey Max. Oh shucks, great. You're great too.
Yeah, we're getting in the groove here, a few episodes in this new podcast duo, if you will, and
Yeah.
I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, me too.
We have an update on the box office game and a little bit of Star Wars talk ahead, following the uh, kind of capitalism holiday that they have. And then we have our feature today, which is talking about the filmography of one Ryan Gosling. His new movie, The Fall Guy, is in theaters, and we thought it would be fun to take a look back at his varied career up to this point.
hmm
But before we do that, Evan, this weekend's festivities was Free Comic Book Day and Star Wars Day. And I tell you, I went to the library not for Star Wars Day, but to pick up some books.
hmm
And when I got there, there's just a bunch of people going into the library with suitcases, and I was like, "What's going on?" And you know, I was able to put two and two together that had to be something Star Wars related. But
hmm
like, I thought like, oh, this library was participating in Free Comic Book Day, but it wasn't. It was just having an event for Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I was like, I really enjoy, people giving back to the community and dressing up. I saw someone with the 501st badge on. That they're a known organization who troops for charity, wearing Star Wars outfits and stuff. And I thought that was, I always find that fun and uh, nice charitable work. Do you have opinions on their work?
I don't know a ton about them, but that's cool. So it was like what, like a cosplay day at the library? That's why people were getting all dressed up, or was it like more broad than that, just kind of like a Star Wars event generally?
Yeah, I think because it was the fourth, they decided that they had like 2 or 3 hours where they had people dressed up in costume, and they had other like Star Wars themed activities going on
Ooh.
at the library. And you know that's fun. As far as like the actual day goes itself, like still like Star Wars, I do, and I
hmm
can't help but also roll my eyes at the whole thing.
Oh, totally. As a lifelong Star Wars fan, uh, you know, it's funny. May the fourth be with you. But every time I hear it, I think of someone lisping while they're saying it. It just feels kind of silly. Um, yeah, it's a fun idea. I think it goes a little bit too far. It's a little bit too commercial. Like, I know my email the last couple days is bombarded with all kinds of Lego Star Wars stuff because I'm on the
Yes.
Lego mailing list, and I have quite a few Lego Star Wars sets in general. I have a Mos Eisley set that I actually really need to build. Maybe I'll find the space to set that up. Um, I feel like it gets a little bit too commercial for my taste, but I like the idea in theory. I like that we have a day dedicated to celebrating Star Wars. So I don't know.
Yeah, like I think it was something back when there was only three movies, but since Disney gained control of the franchise, and it's been built out into many more movies and television shows, and you know all sorts of cartoons, that
hmm
it feels like every day is Star Wars Day.
Oh,
uh,
totally. And it's funny you're saying that because I'm just thinking of a great example because this year they're re-releasing The Phantom Menace in theaters, and for what, its 25th
yeah.
anniversary. And, I remember being so excited that they were making a new Star Wars movie at the time. I remember, like, buying the soundtrack before I even saw the movie, and I remember at the time, there was a good amount of Star Wars merchandise. Like, when we were growing up, there was a lot of Star Wars action figures and various things, but not to the level of today. I remember being really excited that I got a Star Wars bookmark. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it was like a anniversary Star Wars bookmark that I had when I was reading my, Star Wars spin-off novels when I was a kid. That's the kind of stuff that I got excited about. And you're right, now we have it on Disney Plus. There's a million different Star Wars shows. And it's great. I love them. I love The Mandalorian and I loved the spin-off, The Book of Boba Fett. I've always been a big fan of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian. So that's all good stuff. But yeah, you're right. It is like we have, Star Wars Day all year round.
Right, and like they were so Disney has been releasing some of their shows on 4K. So just like last week, their hit show Andor finally came to 4K physical, and that's another
Mm.
Star Wars spinoff that everybody says is the greatest thing that Disney Plus has ever done in the Star Wars or Disney period. And I'm just like, well, I guess I have to find time to watch that, but we'll see. And
Mm.
then on the 4th itself, they also release a trailer for their new show, I guess called The Acolyte or something. They have another trailer for it, and yeah, it's just Star Wars. Even though there hasn't been a movie in a little while, it's very much alive and well between children's cartoons, adult cartoons, anime spin-offs, live action TV series, and what have you. But
Yeah, we're blessed with Star Wars content.
but in other news, we're recording this Sunday after the Fall Guy hit theaters. Um, it's generally being reported that it made about 28 million in its opening weekend. Uh, Many people didn't know where this was going to fall, whether it was going to be 50 plus or right around here in the mid 20s. And many people say that this is kind of like a disappointment to open up the summer season, because traditionally you'd have a big Marvel comic book movie, at least you have for like the last decade, and
Mhm.
they'd be
Yeah.
opening up the box office and bringing people in to the tune of, at least 80 million box office, and be an event film. And I guess people just didn't show up for this one as an event film, and um, I guess everybody probably disappointed with how it turned out. I
Mhm.
can't say that I helped because I have plans to see it. I haven't gotten to the theater yet, so maybe it will have good staying power for the second weekend as more people catch up with
I can only hope so, Max, because it's one of my picks in the box office game, and it's not an auspicious start for me.
it. And then in other news, sad news this morning, actor Bernard Hill passed away. Our audience might know him best as playing the captain in Titanic, or
Mm.
playing King Theoden of Rohan in the Lord of the Rings movies. And I mention it because like he delivers a poem in Two Towers that I always quote to my wife, like almost on a daily occurrence, and
Oh, wow.
she like rolls her eyes at me nonstop. But I I was like, oh, that's too bad he passed away. Obviously, I don't know too many of his things. I think he was also more recently in like Wolf Hall, which was a very acclaimed miniseries from a few years ago.
Mhm.
So yeah, he passed at 79, so not exactly old, and apparently he still had work lined up. So thoughts go out to him and his family. Do you
Mhm.
Are you fond of his those two performances, or?
Yeah, I liked him as the captain on Titanic. To be honest, I haven't seen the Lord of the Rings movies too many times, so I did when you said he played King Theoden, I was like, "I don't know who that is." Like, but I would like to know the quote that you're always saying from him.
Oh, I can't do it well, but it's like this famous. It's a scene like when he's preparing for war in the Two Towers, and it seems like that the end is coming, and he's like, where are the horse with the riders, and um well, now I can't remember even what I'm thinking because I'm put on the spot, but
Oh, sorry.
uh um I I really I quote it quite often and enjoy it. I think he's probably one of my favorite parts of Two Towers. He hit That's where he has the most to do. He returns
Mhm,
in the third movie, but he has less to do there, I think. And then I wanted to add, I saw this news come up, and it's very early in the production, but Coda director Sean Hayter uh, has been attached to the hit novel Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I was very fond of that novel when it came out. I was interested from the author because I think I had read something that they had written before, but then it happened to be all about people creating video games. So it starts where it has like this young boy and girl, and the boy is like sickly, and um, the girl visits him all the time, and they have like a friendship, and it kind of goes south until like they hit college together, and they end up collaborating on a hit video game franchise, and the story goes much further than that, of course, but it's very entertaining. It really moved me when I read it, and I think whenever this comes to fruition, I'll be interested to see how it works. And I enjoy Coda, even though I realize that yeah, it's kind of fluffy. But sometimes you like fluffy. uh,
mhm.
did I am assuming that you had a chance to catch up with Coda, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I liked Coda quite a bit. I mean, was it my favorite movie of the year? No, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good time. It was sweet. It had a good message, and I really thought the performances were great.
Yeah, certainly. And it, I think you're made of stone if you don't like tear up when the lead is singing both sides now and at the end of that movie, and how it all comes together. That's really moving. And
Mhm.
yeah, I enjoy Coda, and hopefully I'll enjoy tomorrow if Sean Hayter ends up directing it. Think projects this early, Evan. Sometimes directors get unattached and someone else picks it up. So,
Right, yeah, you never know what's gonna happen with these things.
but we'll move ahead and move on to our feature today, and that is one Ryan Gosling.
Yes, it
Um,
is.
you know, Evan, I don't even know when I first like ran into Ryan Gosling. I'd like to say like maybe Drive was the first time I really saw him as a major actor, or like at least on my radar, but
Mhm.
um he had been in so much before that. I It's hard to imagine that was really my first blush with his ability and talent. Um, did
Yeah,
you do you have like a memory of maybe when you first started thinking of his work?
I mean, I think that I first saw him in Remember the Titans. That was a movie that I saw quite a few times right around when it came out. Although, like, and I liked his performance, I liked him in it. I didn't necessarily think about him too much. And then, just a few years later, The Notebook came out, and I didn't see it, but I was aware of its, impact on the zeitgeist. So it's kind of like, okay, Ryan Gosling is, this guy who's a leading man, but I agree with you. I feel like he was still kind of like on the fringes for a little while until he started getting to like Drive, Crazy Stupid Love, Ides of March. Like those were movies where he was like playing leads in like fairly good sized movies. And I feel like he's just kind of like gotten more and more cachet since then.
Yeah, certainly. I helped working with Damien Chazelle over there with the dual La La Land and First Man
Mhm.
position as a lead there, and obviously his performance in Barbie and how many people actually saw that movie. Uh, I'm sure everybody knows who Ryan Gosling is now for sure.
Yeah, at this point, if you didn't before, you probably saw him in Barbie at the bare minimum.
You're right. But yeah, he started off working for Disney, Evan, in in the early 90s, and he was in the same class at the Mickey Mouse Club with Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and Justin Timberlake. And, uh, I'm surprised I didn't ever watch that show because looking at 93, that put me right around 7, 8 years old. That I was probably close to the audience for that. And I can't tell you I ever watched it.
No, me neither. It was one of those things I was kind of aware of as, like, a star-making vehicle for so many people who were in the Mickey Mouse Club as kids, and then, careers quickly blew up after that, but never watched it myself.
Yeah, it's funny how much that, like, Disney and by extension Nickelodeon has made a lot of stars that we even know of today. I was talking to my wife about this new song that came out 3 weeks ago by this artist named Sabrina Carpenter, and sure enough, she's part of the children's actor, like, push forward. And she was on a Disney show, and now she's making a career for herself in music. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know these people from those shows, but they obviously get some kind of pedigree from that. And without a doubt, Ryan Gosling was probably asked to sing and dance and act from the Mickey Mouse Club, and he used all those skills he's learned to push him forward into TV and movie roles, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
When I look at his IMDb, like some of the earliest listed things are like uh, one-off roles on like shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark and Goosebumps. And I obviously watching those shows, I would never have known it was Ryan Gosling, but I think I would find it enjoyable to like look them up and find those episodes and see them and be like, oh yeah, that is him, that type of thing.
Yeah, totally, and I love Are You Afraid of the Dark? I've watched it through a few times, but it's funny because when you reminded me that he was on there, I had forgotten. Like, I knew that he was in there, but I'd forgotten his episode almost entirely, so now I feel like I need to go back and rewatch that episode.
Right. Yeah, and you told me that you watched a pretty early movie in his career. Let's see, when did that one take place? So not Remember the Titans, but 2 years
Yeah.
after that, he was in a movie called Murder by Numbers.
Yeah, he was. He was in a movie called Murder by Numbers. Watched this, just a couple days ago for the first time because it was a recommendation of my wife, Shauna. She was like, "Oh, we should watch this movie. It's, like, early in his career." And, yeah, it's like a detective mystery kind of movie where Sandra Bullock is a cop. She's kind of got her own haunted past of being, like, a victim of abuse, and she has PTSD, and she's investigating this murder. And it turns out there's these 2 high school kids played by Ryan Gosling and Michael Pitt, just like weirdos and creeps, and decided like, "Hey, like, let's kill a person, like, let's kill some random woman," and, like, we read all these books on, like, murder and stuff like that so we can, like, figure out how to, like, throw the cops off our trail and do all these little things to, throw off the cops and make them think that someone else did it, and,
Well,
but of
like they read like Clue or like what was that other classic franchise for young men? Um, Something the brothers.
The
I
Hardy
never.
Boys?
Yeah, that's it. The Hardy Boys. Were they like trying to detectives and solve crimes and stuff?
Not quite. I mean, they had, like, textbooks on, like, murder and, like, crime solving stuff that they were, like, reading. They end
Oh,
up, like,
okay.
throwing in a fire later in the movie when they're trying to get rid of all the evidence. But, yeah, it's, very young Ryan Gosling, very fresh-faced, like, literally fresh-faced, like, he looks like he barely has to shave in this movie. And Michael Pitt, who's just a creepy looking guy and usually plays creeps. The 2 of them together. I really enjoyed seeing Ryan Gosling in this early role where he's just playing so creepy and so sleazy and, just ugh, icky Ryan Gosling. Like, there's this part where he realizes that, like, Sandra Bullock is, like, following him, and he, like, confronts her and is just so gross. Like, getting up in her face and, like, trying to kiss her and, like, oh god, it was it was definitely a different thing that I was not used to seeing from Ryan Gosling, so I enjoyed watching him in this. I mean, overall quality of the movie, it's one of those things where it starts out really strong in the beginning, um, especially when it's about like all the things that these guys are doing to try and set up a specific narrative for the cops of like, okay, we got fibers from this guy's rug and a hair of a baboon, and we're gonna plant them on the body to make them think this other guy did it. All that stuff was really interesting, and then the movie just got like progressively worse and worse and worse. It was like really sad. By the end, I'm just kind of like, is this movie even still going on right now?
Yeah. No, I think it's fun to look back at actors and find like these roles that are like almost against type. While I don't think I've seen enough of Ryan Gosling's like full filmography, I've seen probably about 15 movies at least, and he's generally playing the good guy, um, on the right side of things. So I'm sure it was kind of interesting to see him not there.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it definitely felt like it was kind of against type from the roles that he normally plays, especially to see like when you have like a young villain like that, the, messed up high school age kid who's like really sinister, but, outwardly is like, "Oh, I'm a rich guy. I'm so charming. Everybody loves me, but I'm a murderer in secret." That I think was really fun to see him play that type of role.
All right. And so 2 years later, this movie comes out, Evan, that, uh, we both probably didn't have much on our radar. I was looking at it now. I guess I was, a senior in high school, beginning college,
Yeah,
2004.
same, same.
Um, that this movie might have been very important for other people around our age at that time.
Right.
But for me, I probably looked at, romance movie. I'm not going to see that. Um, Certainly, it would come out that would be part of the Nicholas Sparks industrial machine, where he would
Oh god.
he would have like his like sappy rom coms adapted into movies, whether it be this one, The Notebook, or other movies like A Walk to Remember, or I forget what the other ones that he hit that were
Dear
adapted.
John, things
All
like
right,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So definitely not something that I would have gone to, and thankfully I was never asked by a date to go ahead and see this one.
Mhm.
Um, what's interesting about The Notebook off the top is that it's directed by Nick Cassavetes, the son of the famous director John Cassavetes, and I guess Gina Rollins, who also has a role in this movie as um, the older version of Rachel McAdams, Allie. Uh, the movie kind of like plays it for a little while, like, oh, is she really this person older? But
Mhm.
it doesn't do that great of a job. Um, the movie's set up where you have the older Allie played again by Gina Rollins, and James Garner, the older Duke, and they are at, I don't know if it's necessarily an old person's home, but or like just more intensive care, because Allie has some kind of Alzheimer's, and she needs
Mhm.
round the clock care. He, has some kind of heart condition, but like otherwise, he seems like he's pretty healthy. And he just decides that he's going to live in this facility and spend his days recounting his, resharing his youth and their love story together, so that in the hopes
Mhm.
that she'll remember and come back to him. I'm gonna let you talk a little bit, Evan, because you watched this for the first time too, right?
Yeah, this was a first time watch for me. Yeah, I finished it earlier today, and this movie is bad. This movie is really bad, and it's also I'm like, why do people consider this and hold this up as like a romantic movie? I'm just like, why is this the movie that they're that's so in love with? I feel like this whole idea that Noah or Duke, as he's now known in his old age, is
Yeah.
reading their love story to his wife every single day, and she can't remember. I feel like that's, like, torturing someone.
Yeah, I have to
It's
agree,
like
and, like, the other people have felt that way looking at this too, like, it's cruel, not really, like, loving.
no, it doesn't feel romantic that he's there reading this story every day of like, "Hey, remember that time you almost didn't pick me, but you did pick me?" It's like I don't know, it's just it's not very romantic to me, and, like, early in their relationship, he does a lot of, like, things we would now call red flags, like stalkery kind of stuff, like when he hangs off the Ferris wheel and he's like, "Date me or I'm gonna plunge to my death," you know? It's like
Right, and the young versions in this movie are played by Ryan Gosling and, Rachel McAdams, who, also at that time, she was really busting out after appearing in Mean Girls as well. That was really, a star-studded turn for her, and, um,
Mhm.
now she's here in The Notebook.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know, I don't understand why people love this movie so much. I didn't think it was very good. It was way too long. I also hated the part where her mom, played by Joan Allen, was like, "Hey, look, I know you're grappling of whether you should, like, marry the rich guy or marry the guy that you love. Let me tell you a story about the guy that I loved," and then dumped, and then she, like, drives her to a, like, construction site where that guy is working. Then he sees her, she doesn't acknowledge him and just drives away, and I just thought, "That's so fucked up to do to that guy."
Yeah, no, and, some of it, like, I get the sense, like, maybe she was like, "Oh, I made this bad decision or this decision for a relationship that I didn't love the man, but, like, it turned out okay, but maybe you should make the right decision for yourself," and
Yeah, I thought that, like, the idea of it was kinda nice, but also I felt like she was giving her mixed messaging anyway about whether she should actually do it or just marry the rich guy.
right. Yeah, I mean, like, the whole movie exists on, like, a fantasy plane, right? Because, the idea that, you know, someone would remember their life for even a short period of time at the end of the day or something because they had their story recounted to them and it's magical for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a lovely fantasy to live through.
Right.
That
That's not how it works if you know anyone or have any relatives that are battling with Alzheimer's or dementia, that's not how it works.
Right. And the whole relationship and how it builds in the movie, and this idea that he's gonna write her 365 letters every day, and he's gonna keep that up, and um, the mother is not gonna like burn them or get rid of them. She's gonna conveniently like keep them somewhere,
Yeah,
so that
that
the
was odd.
yeah, so that she has like some kind of like proof that he did do it. You know.
Well, it sounds like you're on a similar page. Tell me more about what you thought of this movie on first watch.
Yeah, so I didn't mind like the chemistry between Rachel McAdams and Ryan Gosling. I think that they're fine when they're together.
Yeah.
They're on screen. Two young attractive people. Um they can hold a romance together, and maybe it loses a little bit later in the film where Ryan Gosling transforms into like a mute hermit and who's just like convinced that he's going to build his house and not talk to anybody ever again, and
Mhm.
kind of grumbles his way through like 20 minutes of the movie. But I feel like everything with the older couple just didn't work with me at all, and I'm like, that's hard to say that you enjoy a movie when like half of it doesn't work. um
Yeah, I hear you on that, and I agree with you that I think Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams are good together, and I think they give fine performances. I think it just sucks that the writing is so terrible.
right, yeah, like, "Oh, you my letters," or, "Wait, you didn't get my letters?" And, like, that becomes, like, a big to do, and to be fair, the way that it's written and the way that the story sets it up, you as an audience member, speaking for myself, you want the letters to come back and play a part in the story. You know, like, oh, they made such a big deal about it. It better come back as part of the story. And
Yeah,
it gets paid off, but you know, it just also feels kind of like, oh, very, very convenient.
totally. And I don't know about you, but watching this, I was not surprised by a single thing. This to me felt so utterly predictable. Even though I'd never seen it before, I kind of knew exactly where it was going.
And not only that, Evan, it's like it's so um I don't know, wanting to get to just like the juicy parts and stuff like that, that you know, oh, it'd be great to like see their relationship after they decide to get together. But I guess like, oh, all the drama's gone, and they were like, oh, we'll just fast forward to after they had their happy life to where it sucks again. And they're both like old and in the hospital, and
Yeah. Yeah, it was depressing, to be honest with you. I was kinda like, "This is a movie that people are like, think is so romantic." I feel depressed at the end of this movie.
no, and I think that's fair. It's like I put it on, and my wife was like, "Oh, I'm not watching this. This is depressing." And I'm like, "Yeah, you feel that way?" And I'm like, I thought like maybe if I was gonna put on like a romantic movie, maybe you'd tune in and watch it." She's like, "Oh no, I'm out." Oh,
Not this one, Max.
yeah. I should have known what I was getting into. So, no, and so maybe it wasn't for me then. Maybe it's not for me now. I don't know. I did it do stuff for Ryan Gosling's career and Rachel McAdams' career? Yeah, it's easy to see that.
Yes.
The movie has a a reputation even all these years later, and it felt like I told Evan before we did this episode. I was like, well, if we haven't seen this, it feels like this is one movie that Ryan Gosling's really known for, and it's kind of important that we at least give it the time of day.
Agreed, yeah, I kinda needed to see it for myself to know that I hate it, to know that it sucks.
Right, right. Like you could be told that a movie's bad, but then it's another thing to like, oh, it's bad, but I'm just going on hearsay of other people. But now you can actually have that and say, yeah, I've watched it. It's bad.
Exactly.
um, from there, Ryan Gosling would do. What would he do, Evan? He did like a few smaller movies, right? Like I look at like Lars and the Real Girl. It's like one that is kind of smaller, right?
Yeah, that was one I feel like he was known for. That starts to be where, like, I kinda, like, dip out a little bit of his filmography where I didn't see stuff like that. I didn't see, Blue Valentine, All Good Things, and I picked back up kind of with Drive, and then I've seen a lot of the stuff that he's done since then, including very recently, I looped back around to seeing Crazy Stupid Love, which I hadn't seen, until just, like, a month or 2 ago.
All right. Well, we'll go through these pretty stepwise because we'll get to more things that we know better. But I remember watching most of Blue Valentine, Evan, and it, I'm sure maybe it wouldn't surprise you, but it's up there with like one of the more devastating movies I've ever seen. It's supposed to be like this relationship and between Michelle Williams and Ryan Gosling, and
Uh-huh.
one part of it is like it going forward to the end of the movie, like they're trying to get together and they're trying to be happy, and they're like a new romance. But at the same time, it's also playing the end of their relationship and like how broken it became.
Mhm.
And so these two points like meet at the end of the movie where I think like ultimately it's like their wedding day, and it's also like like what's to come, and it's just not very pleasant to watch. um and then Drive came out, and I heard a lot about Drive from the film festival circuit. I was really looking forward to it. I was not a person that felt like I was gypped, because I know a lot of people from the promotional campaign thought that Drive was going to be like Fast and Furious and have Ryan Gosling drive people around crazy all the time. But that was not that movie. It might be the first 10 minutes, but Drive is now known for its killer soundtrack. It has a great cast of Carey Mulligan and Albert Brooks playing against type. He's the villain of the movie. You have Bryan Cranston in this one too. I think like before he was famous, Oscar Isaac is in it.
Yep, that's
Uh,
right. He
um,
is in it.
so I really enjoy the movie. Still, I think like the first half is kind of like lulls you into like a false sense of security, and then like it turns on the uh the volume all the way up to 11 to borrow Spinal Tap saying, and really gets heavy there after the second half. Um, so you saw Crazy Stupid Love again recently?
Yeah, I saw it for the first time, actually. I hadn't seen it before, and, I thought Ryan Gosling was great in it. He's very funny, he's very charming. I think he's got great chemistry with Steve Carell, in it. I think he's got great chemistry with Emma Stone. I like their relationship in the movie. For listeners who may not have seen it, in Crazy Stupid Love, Ryan Gosling plays a kind of playboy kind of character. He, goes to bars and picks up women for like one night stands, but they're I would say the exception is that they're mutually agreed upon one night stands.
Yeah.
Like he goes there and he hooks up with women and they're kind of like all on the same page about it being just a hookup. And he meets Steve Carell, who's like a recently separated guy whose wife was cheating on him, and he takes pity on him and kind of cleans up and gives him a makeover and kind of teaches him how to talk to women and to, like listen, ask questions about themselves, like things that honestly shouldn't need to be taught, but it's good that he taught him how to do these
Yeah.
things. And yeah, I don't know. I was glad I saw it. I think overall the movie is kind of like in at points, but I think he's great. I think he has great chemistry with Steve Carell and Emma Stone, and I was just really psyched to see him in it because he was very funny.
Now, if I remember correctly, it's almost like three different stories going on at the same time.
Yeah, you see, yeah, you've got like Emma Stone, and she's her misadventures in dating, and she meets Ryan Gosling, and he hits on her early in the movie, and she turns him down, and then they end up meeting up later and actually having like a real relationship. She ends up going in thinking like, "Oh, I'm just gonna hook up with this guy," and then they really hit it off and connect emotionally. In addition, then you've got the Steve Carell kind of working on himself and trying to be a cooler guy and figure out his life. And then there's also some stuff about like, oh, is he gonna get back together with his wife Julianne Moore, and just her, she's with Kevin Bacon, who's the guy she cheated with. And yeah, there's a few different things going on in this movie.
It's funny. One of the funny lines in that movie that I remember and still like think about to this day. I guess like Ryan Gosling's talking to Steve Carell, and he's like drinking like a G and T or something, and it comes like one of those tiny straws. He's like, "Real men don't use tiny straws." He like takes it, like throws it from him, and I'm just like, whenever I get a drink like that, I'm like, "Oh, no tiny straws."
Yeah, totally. That was a funny line. And yeah, pretty much like any time that Ryan Gosling is on screen, or there's that scene in the locker room where he's just standing naked with his leg up on the bench right in Steve Carell's face, just trying to make him uncomfortable. That was also pretty hilarious scene.
All right. Ryan Gosling would have a run of other movies from there. I saw The Ides of March. I couldn't tell you what that one's about anymore. Um,
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen that one too. I remember it being kind of like a political conspiracy kind of thing where Ryan Gosling, I believe, was like a campaign strategist kind of guy. Um, but I remember thinking he was okay in it. And I remember thinking the movie was actually pretty entertaining as a one of those kind of, political thrillers,
yeah,
but I don't remember much.
I think it was like George Clooney's movie right after Good Night and Good Luck, which I really love that movie.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Uh, so I think that's why I was excited for The Ides of March, and it just didn't connect the same way. And unfortunately, George Clooney has had a string now of movies that are not quite as good.
That's a very generous way of saying bad.
Yeah. Um, you know, Gosling went on to do roles in Place Beyond the Pines and Gangster Squad.
Yeah, good in one, bad in the other.
He teamed up with Nicholas Winding Refn once again, and Only God Forgives. I skipped that one, even though I
Me
love
too.
Drive. I just never got around to that. And from there, he was in The Big Short with like a zillion other actors. So that one was one of those movies where you every scene is a face that you know.
Yeah, and I don't remember his performance being bad, but I also don't remember it standing out, when you've got Christian Bale and Steve Carell and other kind of heavy hitters in that movie too with more prominent roles.
Yeah. I meant to rewatch The Nice Guys before we recorded, but I didn't get to see that again. And I remember really loving that movie. Um, it's a Shane Black directed movie, and it stars Gosling and Russell Crowe playing like a pair of private eyes trying to find like a missing person. And I just remember really digging that movie and finding it really funny. I know I'm not the only one I've heard recently that people still ask them if they're gonna ever make a sequel, but unfortunately, it like came out at a bad time, was like killed at the box office. So they're like, yeah, we're probably never gonna see a sequel, but
Yeah.
uh, it was funny, and that brings us to his other 2016 movie, which was La La Land, and he was again opposite Emma Stone, and um, I remember being absolutely psyched to see La La Land, Evan, because I was a huge fan of Damien Chazelle's Whiplash.
Yeah, me too.
Uh, that came out earlier, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. He's getting to do his own musical." There's not a lot of original musicals in Hollywood. They kind of just like repackage Broadway musicals, and I remember being excited about that. And I don't want to say too much about the movie because it's one that's probably the most well known on out of all these movies that we're going to talk about. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, I still enjoy it to this day, even though it feels like an American version of Umbrellas of Cherrenberg. Uh, that's fine. It still has some memorable numbers and a Oscar-winning performance from Emma Stone, her first before she'd win again for Poor Things. Um, do you have anything to add about La La Land, Evan?
I was one of those people who didn't love it. I always like to quote our colleague Andy Crump, who refers to it as blah blah bland. That's kind of more how I felt about La La Land. I thought I loved Whiplash. I thought it was so visceral and so captivating. So I was similarly looking forward to seeing La La Land, and it just didn't really land with me. It was one of those kind of, I don't know, movies that feels like it's too high on itself.
Yeah,
It's too in love with itself and what it's doing. And Ryan Gosling's character I found just utterly annoying. Trying to explain jazz to her, and I don't know, it didn't work for me. I appreciate the choreography, I appreciate the cinematography, and the kind of like grand scale of some of the musical numbers, but I'm one of those people that's like, I could take or leave La La Land.
but it's not your tempo.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, so they did La La Land, and from there, I think Ryan Gosling couldn't be any more in the public eye. Um, he would go on to do Blade Runner 2049, which was, a sequel to a cult classic, sci-fi classic. And while that one I don't think really put him on the map because like Blade Runner 2049 was a decent movie. It wasn't like a blockbuster like we expect movies to be blockbusters because it was a sequel to a movie that also wasn't the biggest movie ever.
Right.
And then he teamed up with Damien Chazelle once again to do First Man. He played Neil Armstrong, and it was, you know, an interesting portrayal of the astronaut. It was like really like watching be sad Neil Armstrong, because like the movie very much starts with um the history of Neil Armstrong and losing his child at a young age,
Mm.
and how much that painted his life and his career. And that's certainly not something that people thought about when they think, oh, Neil Armstrong, the great astronaut, right? But I don't know if that colored what the movie actually turned out to be, or just like how people didn't connect to it as much as La La Land, because it wasn't this warm fuzzy thing. It was kind of cold and distancing.
I
I
didn't see it, but you said it was about Neil Armstrong. I forgot it was about Neil Armstrong. I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's that Ryan Gosling space movie."
No, I like it, and Evan, and like, so as someone who liked La La Land, I made it a point. I guess like First Man had a big premiere at TIFF, and I saw it at their IMAX theater. And even though I was so excited to see it, and being in a film festival didn't help, but I remember like almost falling asleep during some parts of it. And here I am at almost the world premiere at this giant IMAX theater, and I'm still falling asleep. So um, it is not anybody's best moments, but I still like the movie. I own it and would turn it on sometimes to watch it if because I like space movies, but
Mhm.
yeah, it left me wanting. Now the next one on this list, The Gray Man, I didn't see because there's not many Netflix movies that I see, but I'm going to imagine that you watched it.
I haven't. I do see
Oh,
a lot of Netflix movies, but I missed this one. It just kinda fell through the cracks for me.
yeah, my understanding is that it was like up there with like one of the more watched ones. Like also like what's that one with the Russo brothers and Chris Hemsworth? I feel like millions of people watch those movies, but
Oh, yeah, I forget the name of those, like
Extraction or
Hostage,
something, or
Extraction, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, I think this even warranted enough that they said they were gonna do a sequel to it. I don't know if that's still in the works, but I thought I remember reading after this came out that it was popular enough that they said they were gonna do a sequel.
so if you're a fan of The Gray Man, or there's a chance that you might have seen it, let us know through the email what you thought about it. Um, and it almost brings us current to um, more recently his performance in Barbie, like we alluded to, and he was I thought he was fantastic as Ken. And I know it's kind of plays against the whole theme of the movie and how it turned out that he was the only one really nominated, as they're like, oh, let's award the men as opposed to the women. And even that's the message of the whole Barbie movie. um
Well,
but
America
I
Ferrera got nominated, right?
yeah, she did. But no, I thought he was really fantastic in it.
Yeah, I thought so too. He really took the role and ran with it in a good way. He wasn't there chewing scenery, but he really embraced the role and really dug into it and made Ken a like funny character, kind of an airhead, but funny, but also sympathetic. Even though the movie is a commentary on like the patriarchy, and he factors into that in the movie. His character he becomes a part of the machine. All the Kens kind of take over and are ordering the Barbies around. But I think it takes a special performance to make that character still be fun and funny and sympathetic and so memorable as he did.
Right. And you see interviews after the movie came out and everything, and Greta Gerwig is saying like she had it written down in her script that that was Ryan Gosling Ken. That's who she had in mind. And um her intuition paid off, because he did well in that. And I'm looking forward, like we began with on this show. I'm looking forward to the Fall Guy. I think that Ryan Gosling has had pretty varied career. I wouldn't say like he's
Mhm.
one note. He certainly didn't just be like leading heartthrob guy from Notebook for his entire career, which is something he easily could have fallen into.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I've it's hard for some actors that get fall into the rom-com or the romance movie kind of spiral, and then they just get kind of typecast in that role over and over and over again. So, it's interesting and good that he was able to kind of do a lot of different types of roles and continue that up until, through the present.
Yeah, and I think like some of the guys, most notably in my mind, like Leonardo DiCaprio or Robert Pattinson, would be like similar guys who had to like take such a hard turn left to play the to find like these roles that you know weren't really star turning roles, but more grittier or maybe just interesting to them. As you, I think like I think of like Robert Pattinson in High Life from a few years ago, and that movie is definitely not
Woof,
mainstream
that
commercial.
movie.
um, and but like he had to like maybe take this like dramatic turn in his career so that way like he wouldn't be known as like this like sparkly vampire forever.
Yeah. That definitely seems like it's been a trend for folks like, him and Kristen Stewart and, Daniel Radcliffe and others that kind of they made all their money from their franchise, YA franchises, and then took that as license to just go out there and be weird.
Right. Do you have anything to add on Ryan Gosling before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I mean, it was fun, seeing some new Ryan Gosling movies and, like we said before, having an opinion about The Notebook now.
Yeah, like again, it's like one of those movies where you're like, "Oh, I've never seen a Notebook," and then maybe you'll get someone say, "Oh, you never saw the Notebook?" And like,
Yep,
you're
never
like,
again.
"Yeah, I won't have to face that one." Um, for I try to think of like some other movies, like when one of the ones in the contest that I did that I lost Evan years ago. John made me watch Happy Gilmore because I had never seen it,
Oh,
and he was like, "You have to see Happy Gilmore," and I'm like, "Okay." I saw it. I did it.
you survived it.
Yeah, no, it's a funny movie, and apparently there's rumors, at least from Drew Barrymore, that Sandler has Happy Gilmore 2 in the works somewhere
Huh,
soon. So,
okay. Yeah,
um,
I think Christopher McDonald, who played, Shooter McGavin, has definitely hinted as such as well.
yeah. So we'll see. All right. Let's before we get into what we've been watching, let's tell people where to find us, Evan. You can email the podcast at itsthepitchers@gmail.com. You can find me on X and Blue Sky at MH Colville. Um, you can find the podcast at both places at It's the Pick Pod. Evan, how can they find you?
Let's see, I'm on X, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Letterboxd as Real Recon. That's, real as in film reel, and then also over on, Spoiler Piece Theater, the weekly film podcast, which you can get where you get podcasts.
And as always, if you'd like to follow the Substack, I run the It's the Pictures newsletter, and most recently, I detailed some upcoming home video releases, shared some links, and shared some brief thoughts on the new movie Challengers, starring Zendaya, Josh O'Connor, and Michael Faced. And I'll be talking about that in a little bit in more detail. But before I do, let's shoot it back over to Evan and hear what you've been watching.
Sure. I'll start with the brief plug first that I saw a documentary called Butterfly in the Sky, which anyone who's watched the show Reading Rainbow will know that that is a reference to Reading Rainbow. It's a documentary about Reading Rainbow that I highly recommend checking out if you're a fan of the show, you grew up with it. It's an examination of, how the show came to be, with lots of great interviews. Um, Not necessarily a lot of revelatory information, but if you love LeVar Burton like I do, it's just fun watching him talk about it, and watching them talk about how they created such an impactful TV show. So, I'll that's my quick plug for Butterfly in the Sky, which I think it's available to rent, like VOD. Um, and then let's see what else I've been watching. I saw Aaron Brockovich for the first time recently, and was a big fan of that.
That's funny because now I'm thinking about it, Evan. They just released the Oceans trilogy on 4K, so I watched Oceans 11, and so like here we are talking about two Steven Soderbergh movies, right?
Yeah, we're flashing back to like the early 2000s on this episode quite a bit. And yeah, I had never it's been Aaron Brockovich had been on my list for a while because I love Steven Soderbergh's movies. And I haven't seen Julia Roberts in a ton, but I do like her. And it was one of those things where like I think I would see like a little bit here and in there in passing on TV. And then when I finally sat down and watched it recently, I really liked it. I was a big fan. I liked both Julia Roberts' performance, which I think is really layered, um, and really captivating. But I also liked the story quite a bit. I love a good investigatory movie with, doing the work, pounding the pavement, digging deep, finding corruption, rooting it out, all that good stuff. And yeah, I really dug Aaron Brockovich, so I was glad that I finally caught up with it.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, right? She like she's not really a lawyer at first, but like she falls into like this case, right? And really gets involved in it.
Yeah, exactly. She's not a lawyer, she's working in a law office as a kind of researcher kind of role, and she stumbles into this case. She's looking at a real estate case, and there's all these medical files in there, and she says, "Wait a minute, what's all this medical stuff going on in here?" And then realizes that there's this company, like a national conglomerate that is polluting the water in this area, and they're going around trying to pay these people off who have all these health problems by buying their houses up and covering up the decades of contamination that has led these people to have all different kinds of cancers, and it's made them sick, and it's killing them.
Yeah, it's funny. There was a movie recently that came out, I think in 2019. Um, that one's called Dark Waters,
Yes.
and that's by Todd Haynes, and it's like it's kind of similar where he's like investigating this big conglomerate who is um doing shady stuff, and he has to fight the man. But I think that Aaron Brockovich is, of course, a better movie, but it's similar. So if you like those kind of things, I do
Oh,
recommend it.
totally. Yeah, I think if you like Dark Waters, you would definitely like this. I liked both personally. Yeah, I think I might have liked Aaron Brockovich more. Both are based on true stories. I don't think I mentioned that before. So if you like this kind of movie, I also probably would recommend a Civil Action. If you haven't seen that, that's definitely in this same ballpark as these kind of movies.
All right, yeah. For me, outside of continuing to watch X-Men '97, which I'm really enjoying, the new release movie that I caught up with was Challengers. This one is directed by Luca Guadagnino, who directed Call Me by Your Name and more recently Bones and All. This one was supposed to come out last year, had a spot as like the opening night film at Venice Film Festival. But the studio, Amazon MGM, kind of backed out when they learned that they couldn't have Zendaya promoting it.
Hmm.
Probably for the best, because the movie did need her. You have the writer is Justin Kurzetskis, and he is the husband of Celine Song, who wrote Past Lives. So,
Oh, okay.
they have this like they both have this like threesome history in their lives that they're
Love
talking,
triangles.
yeah, that they're talking about through their movies as opposed to each other, I guess. Um, and so this one, Mike Faced and Josh O'Connor are a young juniors tennis doubles champions, and at this event they see Zendaya's character, who's this this tennis prodigy named Tashi, and both the boys pretty much want to sleep with her, and they get in a friendly competition to see who woo her, and her character is very much like, I know I have the power in this situation, so I'm gonna like really do what I want with these two boys, um and the movie like alludes to all these like threesomes and stuff like in their promotional materials, but it never really gets to that point. It's very much like she picks a partner, and she's with that partner, and then she's with the other boy, and that's where the problems lies. That the relationship between the three of them is very fluid, and while it never shows the two spoilers, I guess it never shows the two men sleeping together. They both sleep with her for sure, um
Gotcha.
at different times. um and yeah, it it's reminded me most of like the Alfonso Cuarón movie Y Tu Mama Tambien. This idea of like two boys being infatuated with a woman, and just like going along with it to be with her, and throw in some tennis and the drive for perfection in there, and you got challengers. And I guess it's hard to talk about challengers too without mentioning the Trent Reznor Atticus Ross score, because that is the like heartbeat of this movie, and they collaborated once again with Luca Guadagnino because they did the score for Bones and All as well, and I enjoyed their score for that too. But yeah, I felt really strong about Challengers when I got out of the theater, Evan. So strong that there's this shirt that Zendaya wears for a majority of the movie, and I was like, I need that shirt in my life, and I went online and bought one for myself.
Nice.
Come to find out that they make a like designer version of the one that she's wearing for like $330. I'm like, no person is going to pay $330 for a t-shirt, or at least I hope they don't. Because that I knew exactly like when I saw the shirt, I'm like, I'm going to like someone like T Public or something, so I only had to pay like $15 because it's kind of that silly thing, but I needed it in my life.
Are you wearing it today?
No, I wore it the other day, but I wore it right out of the mail, and it had that like fresh t-shirt stink to it, and I was like, I cannot breathe. I need to wash this. So I will be washing it, and then I'll be wearing it to movie theaters where I hope that people are like, "Oh, that's from that Challengers movie," and that's what I'll be hoping for. Yeah, I am sure they talked about Challengers on Spoiler Piece, right?
No, we actually
No.
haven't talked about it yet.
Oh,
Yeah,
all right. But for me, I really enjoyed it, Evan. I think Zendaya was in two of the best movies of 2024 thus far, with Dune Part 2 and Challengers, and yeah,
nice.
people should check it out.
What else did you like aside from the really cool t-shirt?
What else I like about the movie?
Yeah.
I do agree that like I think like Zendaya is like a big star, and she has this like magnetism about her where things just come easy. I didn't watch Euphoria because I don't know, I guess it's for a different generation, or at least I felt that way when the promotional materials came out. So I didn't really fall for that. But like I saw her briefly in The Greatest Showman, and I could see her talents. And of course, now that she's been in the Spider-Man movies,
Mhm.
um, I see her there, but I've enjoyed her more in these and Dune and Challengers here. So it'd be fun to see her in more roles, and I'm sure many more roles because it seems like she's gonna have quite the career for herself.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
That's Challengers. I really dug the hell out of it, and I hope people give it a check it out. And Evan, I think it's an Amazon MGM movie, so I think like when it goes to Amazon streaming, it might have like the same kind of drive to it as Saltburn did, where like
Mm.
everyone starts talking about it once it's streaming. It's just funny the way that our culture works now, where these movies come out in theaters or they're released. I'm like, nobody's really talking about, but oh, make it streaming where people can like just turn it on in the background and watch it for free, and
Yep.
that movie will blow up. So,
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if that happens. I'm sure you're right. I'm sure it will.
alrighty. So that's our episode today. Evan, thanks again for being on.
Oh, of course. I'm psyched to be here as always and had fun talking about Ryan Gosling.
All right. We have some tentative plans for more episodes this summer. We've been game planning, so you could expect to hear from us in another 2 weeks. And hope you've enjoyed this dive into Ryan Gosling's movies. And we'll talk to everybody again soon.
Catch you later, folks.
Bye.